Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Linetime webinar. Today's webinar will be on the VAT return and the VAT journal. My name's Stephen, and I will be a panelist on the webinar today. One of our accounts trainers, Chanel, she will be taking you through the ins and outs of the VAT return and the VAT journal. The areas that we will be covering today, first of all, Chanel will be looking at the VAT inquiry screen, VAT reports, analysis, looking at the VAT journals, and then closing a VAT quarter in Liberate and submitting your VAT return. Towards the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A button. So if you do, a chat button, if you do have any questions, please type in the chat, and I will try and do my best as we go through the webinar to answer any questions. Obviously, any questions that I can't answer will leave towards the end to rely on Chanel's expertise. But hope we're all well. Thanks for joining us, and I will hand over to Chanel to take us through the VAT return.
Thank you for that, Steve. Just leave this area now. Okay, so yeah, as Steve said, we will be covering the VAT return today. Shouldn't be too long of a webinar, but I'll take you through the areas of the VAT return, including the journals that you can do to affect your VAT figures. Okie doke, so I'm just in Liberate SE at the moment, and I'm just going to access the practice management area of the system by going into the accounts tab and clicking on main menu. All our users who use the classic system of Liberate Classic Practice Management, obviously you wouldn't need to do that. Okay, so in practice management, you can access the VAT return area in two different ways. You have a menu button at the top of your screen with a little drop down where you can click on a relevant area. And you also have cool bars on the right hand side of the screen. And when you click into the cool bars, you're presented with different icons. And the VAT return is one of the icons on there as well. So either or will take you into the same area. So I'm just going to click on the icon at the top of the screen. Don't worry about this message. This is purely because it's a demonstration database, so we don't have a HMRC user account linked to our VAT return, but I will go into that in a little bit of time and look when we've actually come to looking at the submitting the VAT return to HMRC using Liberate. Okay, so the screen that we have in front of us now is our VAT return details. So for people who already submit the VAT return through HMRC, this should look familiar to you. It would tend to try and display it the same way as what HMRC would display it as well. So you'll see that on your screen, you've got all the figures of everything that's due for your VAT return. So VAT due in this period on sales, you've got the total VAT due, the net figures as well. Don't worry about the figures looking a little bit strange on this database. It is a demonstration one, so the figures won't look particularly normal. On the right-hand side of the screen, we also have a drop-down menu allowing you to move between the different VAT quarters on the system to look at previous VAT return figures. So it will default to the most recent period, the most recent quarter on the system, but you can look at previous ones by clicking on the drop-down menu as such. Some of them obviously won't have figures independent on what was done on this database. Okay, so that's the VAT return details screen. We will come back into this a little bit later on, so I can show you about confirming the VAT return. But for now, we're going to look at the different kinds of reports that can be accessed through this particular area of the system. So at the top of the screen, you'll see that you've got some icons on the ribbon bar. So we have an inquiry icon. This is the area that we're in now in the VAT return inquiry, but we also have an icon saying reports, analysis, and summary. These three different areas are all essentially reports that you can look at. The first icon simply called reports. I'm just going to click on that now. And this is a report simply showing, it can show you the breakdown of transactions that make up your VAT return for VAT input and VAT output. So you'll see that you've got two tabs on the screen, input VAT report, output VAT report, and nothing's here at the moment. That's purely because I haven't clicked the refresh button. So if I just click this refresh button at the top of the screen, I'm presented with all the transactions that make up the VAT return for, at this moment in time, the inputs. Now, I just want to point your attention to the bottom right of this screen here, where we have a drop-down menu. If you did want to look at previous VAT return, previous VAT quarters, you can do by simply changing the quarter at the bottom right of the screen and clicking the refresh button again at the top of the screen. I'm just going to go back to June because we have a lot of transactions in here. So input VAT tab that we're looking at the moment. So this is just basically anything that makes up the input VAT on the system. So all the different types of transactions, you'll see that you've got a little transaction type column here. If you want to see, if you want to look at the ledger for one of these transactions, so for example, this particular one here, this cart fee, you can highlight it. So highlight the line, and at the bottom of the window, we have a view ledger button. So I'm just going to click that now. And you'll see that I'm now taken into the ledger. Now, to get back into my VAT return area, I have an icon on my Windows task pane. It's a little red book. If I click on that, it takes me back into the VAT return. Okay, so these are all the different lists of transactions on the screen. And so everything that makes up our input VAT. If you want to print off the transactions, the bottom left of the screen, we have a print button. Click on that, and you can print it or you can export it if needed into an Excel document. At the bottom of the screen here as well, we have a tick box saying show exceptions. So I'm just going to click this now. And what the show exceptions tick box does is it actually allows you to see if any transactions have been entered onto the system where the VAT has actually been adjusted. So if, for example, you were to put on a disbursement on the system and you use your standard VAT rate code, so say for £100 disbursement with £20 VAT, and you were to go into that disbursement itself and change that £20 to something different, then the system will prompt this on the VAT return, and it will show it as an exception. I don't think we have any to demonstrate, but that's basically what this option does here. So if we look on here, we've got a -1. So we've got a -1 on the system here. Now, when you click on this show exceptions and you refresh your report, you get an additional column on here called difference. And then you're easily able to pinpoint which transactions have been adjusted. So where the VAT has physically been changed from what it's been calculated as to be something different. So you'll see here at the bottom of the screen, we have a transaction from the 1st of May, and it's calculated with £30 VAT, but there's a -1 difference. So you'll see that the VAT has actually been changed to £29. And that's basically what the exceptions button does. Now, finally, within this particular area, at the bottom of the screen here, we have our total amount. So you'll just see you've got the total gross amount on the system for the VAT, for input VAT. You've got the net amount, you've got the VAT amount, zero rated amount, and anything outside of scope as well. I'm just going to click on the output VAT report now and refresh. And you'll see that this is now the output VAT report instead. So same kind of functionality, you're able to, oh, sorry, my screen crashed a little bit there. So same functionality, you can look at a transaction, and if you want to look at the ledger on one of them, you can highlight it and click view ledger. Now just bear with and it will load up the ledger. There we go. Aaron Jones. Oh, I must have clicked on a few there. FOS 1/3. That was Aaron Jones that loaded up before there. Okay, so the same functionality as before in regards to the show exceptions button. So it's already ticked because I ticked it before, so it just keeps it selected. But any differences in here, so this would be for if you were putting a bill on the system and it calculates the VAT as a certain value. If you were to physically change that value to be something different, then it would show up as an exception within here. Okay. So the next area that we're going to look at is the analysis area for the VAT return. So I'm just going to click on the analysis button at the top of the screen. And within here, we have a difference in input VAT analysis and also output VAT analysis as well. And you'll see that it's broken down by VAT code. So the different VAT codes that you have on your system, you can see the totals that make up them figures on each of the different ones. Now you'll see when I click onto some of them, nothing is showing at the bottom of the screen. But if I click on this standard rate one, you'll see at the bottom of the screen, I have a difference breakdown, which is that same transaction that we were looking at before. So for this standard, so it was a standard rate VAT code that was adjusted on the system. And you'll see at the bottom of the screen here, you can see that particular transaction. Now, if you want to see everything that makes up the figures for, say, standard rate, at the bottom of this screen here, we have a little tick box which says difference breakdown, differences only. You untick that. Just bear with me a second, guys. I seem to. There we go. Let me just go back into there because I just clicked on a column. So I've unticked it. And if I now click on standard rate again, I'm shown all the different transactions, regardless of if there is a difference. And you'll see that it's currently broken up by the different types of transactions that are on the system. So totals for this particular transaction type, totals for this one, and totals for this one as well. Now, there's a drop-down menu at the bottom of the screen here as well. And you'll see that you've got a few different options to choose from in here. If you were to look at, say, the totals, you'll see that it simply just gives you at the bottom of the screen a total per transaction type for the VAT rate that you have chosen. If you look at values, it gives you the value, so every single value, but it doesn't give you any totals as well. If you choose the option again that says both, it gives you the total per transaction type with a total and also at the bottom the final total. So you have that available for input VAT analysis and also output VAT analysis as well. So remember, if you are wanting to look at a breakdown of this per VAT code and you want to see all the transactions regardless of a difference, just remember to untick this difference breakdown option at the bottom of the screen for the analysis. And then if you want to print all your differences, you have a print difference option on here, which will allow you to just print off the difference. Or if you want to print everything, you can just simply click print at the bottom right of the screen, which allows you to print off just the input and the output totals. Okay. So the final report area that I'm going to show you is the VAT summary. So I'm just going to click on summary at the top of the screen and you'll see that this is simply a summary of all the different types of transactions that you can do on the system per VAT rate. So you'll see that we've got a summary of bills and credit notes here, and this is the total of bills and credit notes raised for 0 rated. This is the total for standard rate, disbursement, billed, that's VAT code, outside of scope, and another standard rated one. Just to reiterate, these are the VAT codes that you guys will have on your system, so they will vary system to system. So whatever VAT codes that you have available on yours will obviously be different to what are on our demonstration database. And you'll see then we've also got a summary of disbursements billed within the quarter and a total per VAT code on here. And then you also can see a summary of billing information for the quarter, so just a complete total on here as well. And also the profit costs by VAT rate as well. So if there were different VAT rates on profit cost bill, then you would see that on this screen here. And again, just to reiterate, in regards to if you want to look at previous VAT quarters, you can by clicking on the drop-down menu at the bottom of your screen. Like so. Okie doke, guys. So within this screen as well, you can also print the breakdown at the bottom left of the screen. Allows you to print off the differences. So again, this screen does show you anytime something has been changed on the system. And if I just click print, you'll see that I'm able to print off a breakdown on here. The bottom of the screen as well, you have a difference only tick box. It's usually ticked by default, but if you were to untick it, it allows you to print off the full breakdown of these different areas. Like so. Okay. So we're now going to look at closing a VAT quarter within Liberate. So to do this, I'm going to take us back into the inquiry screen at the top of the window. So inquiry at the top of the screen. And I'm taken back into my VAT return area. So you'll see that we have the totals, as mentioned before, the totals of all the different elements that make up your VAT return. If you need to print this off for some reason or another, you have the print VAT return option here. Bear in mind as well that you can always go back into your VAT return for previous quarters. So if you were to go into a different one, you could then print off a different quarter. You'll also see that we have a button available here that says Confirm VAT Return. This Confirm VAT Return button is only available when you need to close down your VAT quarter for the system. So it will obviously only be available every 3 months. Now, one thing to point out with the VAT return as well, that if you were to try and close down your month end and you haven't closed down your VAT return yet, your VAT quarter, you won't be able to close the period down. And another thing to point out as well is that when you are confirming your VAT return in this area, you are simply closing it down within Liberate. We are still not submitting the VAT return to HMRC at this moment in time. We're simply just closing down that VAT quarter. And to do that, it's simply clicking this button here. So when you click it, a box appears and it's just asking if all the postings for the current VAT return have been entered on the system. So obviously if you've still got things to do for your month end and things, then you might not want to close it down just yet. And when you say yes, it closes down the VAT quarter. So it will now no longer be available to click until 3 months' time. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to look at, guys, before we actually go to looking at submitting your VAT return to HMRC, is the VAT return journals area. So to do that, I'm going to go back into my practice management menu. So at the bottom of the screen, I have my yellow helix. I'll just click on that. It takes me back into practice management. And from within there, I'm going to go into the nominal area. Again, you can get to these areas in different ways. You can go into it by clicking on nominal and just choosing one of the menu options on here, or you can click on the icon that says nominal on the toolbar. I'm just going to click on nominal and it will take me into a new window. And within here, we have our VAT return journal. Now, just to explain something to you, and people who either don't use our VAT return module at the moment or are new customers, the VAT return journal and the journal, the actual normal Liberate journal, are different. The VAT return journal allows you to affect the figures within your VAT return area, so your VAT input value and your VAT output value, and also affect as well the net value for sales and purchases also. So it allows you to change the figures before you submit them to HMRC. The normal journal posting area within Liberate will not allow you to do that. That is just simply for day-to-day journals from nominal accounts, one nominal account to another. So the VAT return journal is the one you will need to use if you need to change them figures in that VAT return inquiry screen. Another thing to point out as well is your VAT return journal cannot be used just for a normal journal. So any journals being put on the system where you're just moving accounts from, say, your expenses account to your another nominal account, then you wouldn't be able to use the VAT return journal. The VAT return journal will only work if you have it affecting one of the VAT nominals. Okay, so for our VAT return journal, I'm going to do this Blue Peter style and import one that I had on the system from earlier. So at the top of the screen, we have an import option. I'm just going to click on the button. When you take into this screen, if your CSV file that you are importing has column headers, remember to tick this. If not, then the system will get confused. And then on the top right of the screen, we have a little ellipsis that I'm just going to click. And it takes me into Windows Explorer where I can locate my file. So my VAT return journal, as you can see, is available here. I'm just going to click open. And provided everything's been completed correctly, then you will get a message saying file loaded successfully. So you'll see on the screen here that I am doing a journal. My journal got 3 different lines to it. And you can see the branch that's been affected, the nominal codes that are being affected as well, along with the various details. Now I'm going to just click this import button at the bottom of the screen, which will then move these lines into the journal posting area, allowing me to check it finally before submitting. The file has been imported successfully, and I don't want to import another file. And I also don't want to keep the log file that gets saved. So as with the standard Liberate journal posting area, once you've imported them into this area, or you've manually inputted them into this area, you're able to check the figures and things. And at the top right of the screen, you have the total debits value and the total credits value, which obviously you will know what they need to be. Now, 2 of these accounts on here are VAT accounts. So the top nominal code 770140 is our output VAT account, and 770130 is our input VAT account. So you'll see that I am posting journals to these, and I also have just a random nominal account in here which I'm doing some adjustment to as well. Now, these figures here in the debit and the credit column are the values that make up the figures at the top right of the screen, so the total debits and the total credits. However, unlike the normal journal posting area, there is an additional value that you can enter into here, which is the net, and then in brackets, memo only value. These particular values here are the ones that affect your net totals in your VAT return for your sales and your purchases, dependent on if you are posting to VAT output or VAT input. So just to explain what these figures are, when you go into your VAT return, it's your total value of sales excluding VAT and your total value of purchases excluding VAT. So these are the things that can be affected using the net fields within the journals. So you'll see £888.88 there and £1,002.99. Okay, so once you are happy with your figures and everything is okay, Obviously, if you need to change one, you can by just double clicking on it and making an amendment. But once you are happy, the bottom right of the screen, you have an OK button. When you press that, that then posts the transactions to the system. It will automatically take you into a print preview screen, which you can either cancel or you can print if necessary. If you wanted to put a journal on manually, so if you didn't want to import it from using a CSV file, you can also do that by clicking Add at the bottom of the screen, which will take you into your nominal journal entry screen for the VAT return journals. And you would just complete the necessary boxes, any cost centres, you choose them from the drop-down menus. You choose the nominal code. Remember that it does have to affect one of the VAT accounts as well. Pop in a description or an extra description and a reference. Fill in the relevant details. Also, the VAT rate as well is also applicable in these. That's another difference as well, that you can affect a particular VAT rate when you are doing the journals to know. So you can say which VAT rate you want to be affected in here. And then once you've completed it, you then just press OK. And again, it'll just appear on the screen at the top. Okay. So that is the VAT journal area. And we are now going to get to the end of the session today and look at our submission to HMRC. Now, the first thing that you will have to do in regards to submitting your VAT return to HMRC is you need to ensure that your VAT number is added on your company record. Now, for classic users, your company record can be found in the maintenance tab and company, and you'll be taken into your company record, like so. If you were to access it from the Liberate admin area, it would be the same thing. So in Liberate, for your Liberate administration, there is a field to apply your VAT number as well. If you don't have your VAT number applied, you won't be able to get into the VAT return anyway. The next thing that you have to do in order to submit the VAT return through Liberate to HMRC is you need to authorize your user. So when you first log in, when you first go into the VAT return module, a box appears on the screen. It won't appear now because obviously this box is already completed for this database, but it will ask you for your HMRC user credentials, so your gateway ID and password. You'd have to enter them in, and then you'll be able to get into the VAT return area and also authorize your user. So at the top of the screen, there are two icons saying obligations and VAT MTD. Both these icons are in relation to submitting the VAT return to HMRC. So the first one we're going to go into is VAT MTD. And within here is where you can authorize your user. Now, we won't be able to do this in the webinar, and that is purely because you need HMRC credentials in order to do this. So this would be, you guys would have to put in your credentials and then click on Authorize User. What that will do then is it will then send a message to the HMRC website, and you'll get a few pop-ups on the screen asking you to confirm that you accept the terms and conditions and things like that. Now, there is another option on this screen. So if you have authorized your VAT return user already, so your government user, you've already authorized that, but then, for example, you've had to change your password or your gateway ID has changed for any reason, you also have the Start Manual Authorization option, which will allow you to change your gateway ID if needed. Okay. So once you've authorized your user, then you will be able to submit your digital VAT return to the government, HMRC. So at the top of the screen, you have two different options on here. So you've got the VAT MTD, which we've just been into, and we have obligations. Now, the obligations area is basically where you will retrieve the obligation that HMRC are expecting from you for your VAT return. So at the top of this, at the top right of this window, you have there'll be a button which will be available as long as a VAT return is due, which will say retrieve obligations. Now, when you click that, it will then log on to HMRC on your behalf, and it will pull through whatever VAT return is expected to be submitted. So whatever VAT return is expected for that particular quarter. And when you've clicked it, a line will appear on the screen, which will have the details. So the start date of the VAT quarter, the end date of the VAT quarter, and the due date. One thing to point out, guys, I'm not dependent on when you last had an upgrade from ourselves, but just be careful not to click this button more than once. You only need to click it once to get the obligations. Sometimes if it doesn't, if the obligation doesn't appear on the screen straight away, maybe just leave the area and go back into it. There may be some delay on the website or something, which is causing the delay in the obligation being received. Once you've clicked on retrieve obligations and it appears on the screen at the top, you can then go back into the VAT MTD icon and you will be able to submit your VAT return. So at the top of the screen here, there will be a submit VAT return option here, and you will be able to see the figures on the screen. You'll see the total VAT due, all the standard information that you see in the VAT inquiry screen here. You'll be able to see it in the VAT MTD window as well, and you'll be able to double check them figures. Once you're happy with them, click submit VAT return, and that will send the VAT return off to HMRC for you. Okay, so that is all we have for this webinar today, guys. I told you it wasn't going to be a particularly long one. So we're going to open up the session now for any questions that have arrived. I did see a few popping up, but I don't see any left.
Thanks, Chanel. That was informative and useful as always. Yeah, we had a few questions. There's a few questions. I'll let you I'll let you field these. I've already answered some as they've come up.
Oh yes, I can see. I can't see any more questions at the moment. Okay, so we've got some questions now. I'll give some people time to type them out. Okay, so how does the submitting work for two different companies? So it depends really. If you have if there's two different databases, then you just submit them on each separate database. If the companies are on the same database, I'll have to double check with you on there may be something that needs to be applied on the database allowing you to do the submission. Okay. I'll find out some more information on that for you, Katie, and get back to you.
Yeah, essentially, you know, if they're on the same database and they're two different branches, then there's a parameter which says separate VAT return per branch, and then on the branch record in admin, on the branch user record in the admin utility, you put the VAT number, and effectively the system will then group the VAT returns per VAT number. So you could essentially have two branches that are under one VAT return and then one branch under a different VAT return, as long as obviously when you're putting in the VAT number on the two branches on the same VAT return, they obviously will have the same VAT number, and then on the other one, the third one, you'll have a different VAT number. So when you come into this area here in the VAT return, you will just have a drop down to choose which figures you want to submit.
Thank you for that, Steve.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so Anne, we are taking an upgrade soon, please, because Linetime told us we needed it for HMRC change. Yes, so Anne, it was part of the change was in regards to the retrieving the obligations button that I mentioned before. So when the button was clicked and it was clicked again, even though an obligation had already been retrieved, it was causing an issue because it was contacting HMRC again to get another obligation, and obviously the obligation had already been retrieved. So that was one of the changes that have been made, which is why we've been upgrading people to basically fix that for you. So it should pop up with like a message or something telling you. Okay, can I make sure I put the back up here then into the adjustment section? Let me just see. So you can do it before or after, to be honest, Kenny. You can do, because with it being a journal, you can still adjust the figures after closing down. But ideally, you would probably adjust the figures before confirming. But there may be a time when you need to do it beforehand. Okay, oh, we've got some more chats. You're welcome. Okay, we could just manually change the figures in our VAT, but I don't see how we could do that. Here's one, not to change the balance sheet figures. Are you meaning that you don't want to change the figures on Liberate? So when you run reports and things? I'll get back to you with a bit more information on that, Katie. And see what you'd need to do. So in regards to anyone who joined later on and the session had already been started, or anyone who actually hasn't been able to join today, if you know anybody who you work with who wanted to see this webinar, it is being recorded, so you will eventually see this on our website under the event section. If you go to the event section and scroll a little bit further down, you'll see that there have been previous webinars and you'll be able to access the recording. Okay. Right, I think that's about it then, guys. Leave it open a minute or so, just to see if any more questions come through. But no, that looks about it. Okay, well, as I mentioned before, this webinar has been recorded, so you will see it eventually on the website. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And I'm sure that you will be seeing another webinar soon.
Yeah, have a good afternoon, everybody. Enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, have a good weekend, guys.
See you later, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.